Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 30 of One Step at a Time with Charlie Chen. And I actually don't exactly know what to properly title this, but well, by the time you see this video, that I would have came up with a title, right? Now, the thing with this video has to do both with weakness and adaptability, but it also has to do with like my moment of weakness, and it also has to do with my like pretty much inner conflict, right? So, so to well, it's like this. So me and my friend Tyler in New York, we tend to have a disagreement, and this one is actually pretty strong, where it has to do with like our understanding of weakness, right? And for me, weakness, well, actually, let's start with Tyler. Tyler's understanding of weakness is this: he hates weakness and he do his best to overcome weakness within himself. So if he's not good at something, he will go out of his way to get good at it so it's no longer a weakness, right? For me, my understanding of weakness is more flowy in the sense that I think weakness makes us who we are. Now, it's not to say that we cannot grow beyond what our natural weakness is, but I believe that understanding our own weaknesses and strength is part of understanding yourself. And if you understand yourself, then you wouldn't put yourself into situations where your weakness are weaknesses and your strength on strength, right? So knowing your weakness and strength, put yourself into situations where your weaknesses don't really come into play. Like for instance, I'm bad at socializing sometimes, right? Like socializing with people. So I surround myself with talk talkative people so that sometimes if someone want to hit up a chat, I can say, hey, you go talk to this other person. I need to go focus on getting some work done, right? So it's not like it's not possible to circumvent it. And of course, I can work on being more sociable, but I'm an introvert and it drains me. So I have to be very selective with like, when to exert myself and who I exert myself on, right? And that's the thing, right? Because from Tyler's point of view, I'm someone who's like I'm weak and I don't want to change, and I get that because it's like, it's like a baby, right? Like if a baby who doesn't know how to share, a baby who cries at everything, and if we don't overcome that, can you imagine the kind of monster that we become when they become adults? But on the other hand, I just feel like some weaknesses aren't aren't meant to be overcome. Like for instance, like sometimes people might say I'm gullible or too trusting, and it can be a weakness, but I'm of the firm belief that it's important to put the best foot forward, right? And so, because the thing is, if you don't put your best foot forward, then what are you really building your interactions and relationships on, right, with other people? Now, it's not to say that there are no bad people, but yeah. But as for weakness and like overcoming weakness or adapting to it, I think both Tyler's point and my point are valid in the sense that if you have a weakness, especially a crippling one, your Achilles heel, right? I would say do your best to overcome it, but if it is such a thing where you cannot overcome it, then I believe some adaptation is in order. So, So I think in terms of being healthy, just make sure you do both, right? But why do I bring that up? This whole talk about weakness and adaptability, right? Because, well, and what does it have to do with the weakness within myself, right? Well, something interesting happened. So last week or the week before last, remember how they had the Winter Olympics, right? And in the US headlines, you have Alyssa Liu doing the figure skating, and you have Eileen Gu doing the freestyle skiing or something, right? I'm not a sports fan. I just saw those two names, right? And then what was interesting was that Eileen decided to represent China, and Alyssa decided to represent America. Now, they were both, I don't know about their circumstances, but I think their parents are like Chinese, or at least one of them is Chinese, and then they grew up in America. Whether they're born in America and then grew up in America is one thing, but their family definitely has like a pretty much on the parents level came from China, right? And it caused an uproar of sorts, or rather, people are trying to play politics with it, where they're saying that Eileen is a traitor and Alyssa did America proud and things like that, right? Now, now personally, I think success is success. It doesn't really matter, like which country they decide to represent, right? At a certain level, at a certain level, that pretty much pretty much the saying every road lead to Rome. Well, when you're in Rome, which supposedly as is a symbol of success, it doesn't really matter, right? So I see two successful people uh, just being successful, like there's nothing to say about it, right? But what is to say about it is me, in the sense that I was born in China, and then I moved to America when I was 10, and then I got naturalized when I was 16, when my mom became an American citizen, right? And so to me, America raised me, right? But I don't know if you have seen the news lately, right? You think about between the whole AI, think about all the wars we're getting into, think about the lack of things happening in the US with the release of the files, right? Now, at some level, none of it really matters because unless it come knocking on the door, all these are just talking points, right? Like I believe in my one of my earlier videos, I said, how do you combat manipulation? Well, don't worry about things that doesn't really bother you, right? But that's the thing with politics is that a lot of times politics doesn't make sense, or rather doesn't concern you, so you ignore it until it's too late when they come knocking on the door, right? And I myself, as a kid growing up, I never liked politics, right? But then essentially but then politics started happening to me. Like I didn't want it, but it started happening to me. So now I have to pay attention to what's going on around the world just to get an idea, right? But anyway, so my moment of weakness, or I wouldn't say weakness, but a conflict, inner conflict, was this, right? This country raised me, and I do want to do it right by this country, but is the country in the current state the same one that I want to, like, is this country in its current state the same one that I wouldn't say deserve that I should pay the kindness back to, right? Because Because if we become a tyrannical country, then me, like it's the same, it's a thing like like how you hear about those stories where like a family member did some crime, like a son who robbed a bank or something, got home, and then the mom snitched on the son to the police, right? Like like in these kind of situations where, and excuse me, in these kind of situations where it seems like we are the bad guys, what is the right thing to do, right? Like, is the right thing to do point out what's wrong with this country and try to get people to steer the country towards what was promised or what was implied, right? As in, like when people say make America great again, they think about when America was flourishing, right? And where everybody flourished. But right now, with this whole K-shaped economy and things like that, like make America great again, it's almost like make Americans who are in my inner circles great again, right? So so it doesn't quite sit right, right? So is a thing, in other words, it's something like do you or do I, seeing the current situation is the right thing to do to try to get America to back to what it used to be, or is the right thing to do is just believe that this is still America and do everything I can to support whatever is American, right? Or or do I, like, let's say America is no longer itself and it's beyond saving, do I go back to China, right? But I don't want to go back to China for many reasons. Well, for one, like in a way, like I'm used to living in America now, where like all this free speech and everything, right? Like in China, yeah, you also have free speech, but you cannot really openly talk about politics without getting into trouble, right? Like so so there's that, right? And then on top of that, I've been Americanized. So like the cultural differences, the different the different social cues between things like that. I don't have it, right? Like for instance, here's something I learned, and only in hindsight. Like for instance, when I first got married when I was like 20 years old, my in-laws came to visit, and they gave us $600. But the way they say it as it is some gift, right? And I thought, my dumbass thought, the $600 was for me to spend wherever I want, right? But no, it's like later on, it was explained to me that whenever your in-laws show up with money, it's actually meant that these are the money they give to you so that you don't have the pressure or financial pressure of spending your own money, but use this money to show them around and show them around town and give them a good time, right? I didn't know, but these are like different kind of thing. So I didn't know, so I ended up seeming like a jackass to them, right? So now, obviously, well, not obviously, what ended up happening was when I was 28 during my divorce, I ended up returning that money and I apologized because it's like, well, I didn't know, right? So that's one less thing to feel guilty about. But yeah, there are like different things. Now, of course, my pride is also on the line in the sense that I've been living in America for, how many years was that? 24 years now, about to be 25 this month. So I lived in this country for 25 years. If I were to go to China, it's almost as if I'm saying that this last 25 years of my life has been a lie, that I wasted my time and now I have to go back to China to start from zero, right? Zero connections, not really close with my relatives, don't even know if I can compete against or with the local labor force, right? Like, what would my source of income be, right? Teach English? Well, yeah, but the thing is, with the way the world is, like, one thing that I found interesting is like China started removing like language courses as a requirement, like second language courses as a requirement in their curriculum, and then they replaced it with like understanding of local culture or local resource or whatever. So like local government and things like that, right? So so it's interesting how it's playing out over there. But pretty much like personally, I don't want to go back to China unless I have to, right? But then that leaves staying in America, right? And then that's the conflict, right? Because am I like if I do nothing, and even if I do nothing, just by being a by being a wage slave and paying taxes, I'm essentially supporting whatever the current regime is doing, right? So is it about speaking up? Is it about just keeping my head low and keep working? Like these are real conflicts, right? Now, I mentioned that it was interesting to me, right? Well, well, this thing happened. So Coldtowne, if you know me, I've been on a few times, and there's this guy who lives in Arizona by the name of Ryan. He does Coldtowne autographs. Now, I don't think he's affiliated with Coldtowne in any way, but he pretty much reached out to me and asked me for an autograph way back in like or September last year, right? When I was still like running around like a headless chicken trying to figure out how to survive after being laid off, right? And so and so it was actually so my autograph, and I also sent Ryan a postcard and a letter. It didn't arrive, like it did arrive, but it didn't get posted until like sometime last week, right? And then and then that's when I saw my letter again, and letter made to Ryan, and it came at an interesting time because, as you know, I was thinking about what is the right thing to do, right? Like obviously, I want it's like this, right? Like is my allegiance to America, the country, or is my allegiance to the Americans I have met, right? Growing up, my friends, my current colleagues, right? So so it's weird because it's like it's weird in a sense that it's like when you ask yourself your loyalty, is your loyalty towards this country? Are you loyal towards this concept of America? Are you loyal to the people? Are you loyal to the law? Are you loyal to something, right? And 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 it's a painful question to ask because a lot of us, me included, want to be, well, I wouldn't say on the right side of history, but like a lot of us at least want to like be in a situation where, you know, play along to get along, right? But some things, some things just might doesn't work. Now to continue, like pretty much the letter I read it, and in my letter, pretty much I said that I decided instead of just, telling jokes to make people laugh and not think about the big questions, I want to be a comedian like George Carlin and Dave Chappelle and others so that I can tell jokes that make people think, right? And and that to me currently, comedy is the best shot at doing just that, right? So so that was a good reminder of what I wanted to do or my decisions. And I don't think that have changed. I do want what's good for America, at least in my memories of America, right? Like a part of me don't really recognize the current country because it almost feels like a empire of sorts. Or, we go around starting wars and things like that. But then we always went around and starting wars, right? But are the wars justified or have they been manufactured and things like that? It's almost like one thing I noticed is that it used to there used to be this need to like get public consensus and have votes on things like that. But now it just like instead of being part of this thing called America, it's almost like America just happens to you now, right? Like nobody really voted on AI, nobody voted on like the mass layoffs, nobody voted on the pandemic and the vaccines, nobody voted on like going to war with Iran. Like it just happens, right? Like and so or like nobody really voted on Epstein files in the sense that, yeah, there are votes on whether releasing it or not releasing it, but like whether there's actual like consequences for the people in this country remains to be seen, right? So so why all of that, right? So there's a concept and also an interesting thing I noticed on YouTube is there used to be a video by CGP or GCP Grey called Rules for Rulers. But when I looked for it again, it now go by a different title. So I don't know if YouTube has been like changing video titles around so you cannot find certain videos, but I was able to find it. And for rules for rulers, the main concept are like keys to power, as in your job as a ruler is to share control the resources and distribute it to your keys to power, right? So in a dictatorship, in a dictatorship, you have the military, you have the people who run the government, and then maybe the police force, something like that. You pay those people and make them happy, and you don't really care about the people because the people can never really have a say, especially with the military and the other two around, right? Now, so that would be a dictatorship, and the difference between that and a democracy is that in democracy, instead of having a few keys to power, you have many different people, right? And then you sort them by groups, right? Like the farmers are a block, the tech workers are a block, parents are a block, now the elderly are a block. Now, sometimes the tradesmen can be a block. Now, children are a block, but since they don't vote, so like you don't really have to put resources that way. Like if you were to put resources that way, it's really just to appease the parents within the country, right? And one key point in that video that in Rules for Ruler is this. Democracies are better for the people, not because out of the kindness of the ruler's heart, right? It's because in dictatorships, they can usually extract the resources without the people's involvement, right? So you can like get the diamonds out of the ground without the people. You can get the oil out of the ground without the people. As long as you can pay off some foreign country to do it, like you just fence it off and everyone else is starving outside, right? Now, democracies are nicer for the people because people are the resource, or people are the valuable things for democracy, right? Like your knowledge workers and all that things, right? And so, and so, and this is not to say America bad or China good or vice versa or whatever, right? The main point is this: we're moving towards a situation where knowledge workers in America, but also in the West and also around the world, are being replaced by AI, or at least they're trying to attempt it, right? And then on top of that, you think about the whole mass firing, mass layoffs, and then they get rewarded with like stock and things like that, right? So, in other words, people are being cut from the equation in the wealth or the money generating process or value generating process, right? Well, if you don't need people, and given that democracies are nice because people are the resource, but if you don't need the people anymore, what do you think is going to happen, right? And so that is the thing that I've been thinking about and that has been troubling me, right? Now, obviously, the goal isn't to like, you know, betray the country or anything like that, because I don't even have anything worthwhile to like divulge on, right? But 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 the existential question for me then becomes is like, well, what does it mean to be it sounds so like bad, but what does it mean to be a good American, right? Like, is this like just part of the American cycle where we are angels during some time and then we're just devils causing like chaos around the world? And right now it's that devil cycle, and as a good American, I'm supposed to just shut up and then let the benefit happen to the country via resource extraction and hopefully trickle down. Economics will trickle down the benefit down to me, right? Is that the right thing to do? Or is the right thing to do to speak up, try to get people to be aware, um, and also like explaining what's how we are being screwed, right? Like sometimes it's almost like it's harder to explain to people that something is bad because you're screwed in ways that you don't know about than, like for instance, like I remember recently there was a law or a mandate or I don't know was passed talking about like how corporations or um, like large financial firms. I forgot which one it was about big corporations not being able to own homes anymore or things like that, like buy single family homes. But then they turned around and redefined like the definition of like what is a small business so that more businesses qualify as a small business, thus bypassing the, no big businesses can buy single family homes situation, right? Now, don't quote me on this, do your research, but this is what I'm told or what's shown to me on YouTube, right? And not everything on YouTube is real. So do your research on that too, please. And because then as an American, then I ask myself, well then, the classic question, are we the bad guys, right? Well, if we are the bad guys, what's the right thing to do, right? Join the good guys or try to get the bad guys to come to the good side, right? Like these are choices. And I guess I have a certain kind of clarity now in the sense that I do want what's good for this country, and I don't think by defecting to any other good country, quote unquote, is going to do this situation any good, right? Now, also, just to go back to the beginning about the two Olympians, you have to think that sometimes you get sponsorship deals and sometimes you don't. So sometimes the, the logic is not even about loyalty, but you know, your ability to get the bag, right? So yeah, I mean, it's not it's not that it's not going great because me as an individual, I'll live in the current situation, right? Like there are so many more people who are struggling out there without jobs, right? And so I have been fortunate that I was able to find a job after 5 months of searching. But what is it that we're propping up, right? Am I a person or am I a useful tool or am I these are the question I ask myself. But yeah, I want what's good for America and I'll do what I can. And because just saying that it's not my problem, it feels unsatisfying and I'm a firm believe I'm a firm believer in that we have more influence than we think. So, and I'll keep to it. And so yeah, I I want a good, happy ending for us so that because what's the point of success if you don't have people to celebrate it with, right? So yeah. Well, that's all I got for now. As for the video title, I guess we could do inner conflict. We could do weakness versus adaptability. We could do China versus America. We could do um, contemplating betrayal. No, no, none of that really. It's I think I think a proper title for this would be a moment of weakness, and it's not even weak. It's more like a moment of confusion, right? Where there's a lot of self-doubt. But yeah, I grew up in this country and I want to be proud of it. So, yeah, I'll see you guys around next week and have a great March. See you.